Igbo bụ ekele m unu. Asị m ya dịrị nwoke mma, ya dịrị nwaanyị mma. Ndụ mmiri ndụ azụ, mmiri ya ara azụ ahụ. Egbe ya bere ugobere kesi bụ ihe bịara nkwụkwa ya. Okirikiri ka a na-agba ukwu ose adị ya eri agbawa dịka izu mgba abụọ abaa ya ime agwọ tụọ mbe ya tụrụ ekwikwe. Ọchụghị ọkụkọ nwadị ọkụkọ nwa nwa ọsọ. Onye na-adịghị ovuli isi adịghị ihe ọ na-akọwa. Onye na-adịghị ihe mere adịghị ele eme ya anya. Ọ bụ agụ ihe ụzọ agụ ihe ọnụ. Ọnụ gbara nkịtị ya eruchie. Onye nyere kwuru letara ya n'ọkụ ala mmụọ. Agbara amụ mmadụ ekelela m unu. Amadi ọha abịala. Ya gaziere anyị ụbọchị taa. Anyị na-ekwu okwu dị mkpa n'ala Igbo. Okwu a gbasara ezinụlọ. Today, we are discussing an important message about family. This message concerns homes. And we are going to look into this message of domestic violence. Domestic violence, I will want to use the scenario on ground to analyze this domestic violence. You see, we are not here to discourage you not to go to church. We are here to encourage you to understand the reason why the church is there. Domestic violence. I'm going to use a case study of singer Osinachi, who is alleged to have been passed on through domestic violence. Some video went viral where the husband attacked this young woman violently, and you will ask yourself, what could have reason the beast of this young man to attack this lady in this nature? Domestic violence. And now, I want to narrow it down to a particular sector so that we can discuss it as a people and understand the importance and the implications of the so-called gospel preachers in domestic violence. I am, in this video, accusing, pointing finger on the gospel preachers as the cause of so many debased homes where domestic violence reigns. How? Somebody out there in ignorance will say, I'm an antichrist. A foolish one out there will say, what is this stupid man saying? But I want you to pay attention. When I begin to look into, I was studying the scenario of Osinachi and husband. All the information is online, all activities online. One evening, I had a deep thought of that incident. All my mind was projected is what could have been this pain that this young man will have that will enable, that will give him the courage to hit a woman one, hit the second time, hit the third time, even when the woman ran to a particular part and the hitting continues. What do you think could cause this? While I was meditating and looking into the affair, my eyes were open, my understanding was open, and I began to discern issues. I was not there, but I want to tell you one of the most important things that causes these problems of domestic violence. The pastor will initiate a program in the church 5 o'clock in the morning. The woman will rise up from the home to go and attend to the duty of his pastor, neglecting her responsibility at home. And when the man is in need of the service of the woman as her helpmate, she is not where to be found other than in the room, in the gospel warehouse, where they go and make their noise in the name of worshiping God. You might not understand where I'm coming from, but you are a man. I try to put myself in the shoe of the husband of the gospel singer Osinachi to see the pain he is into. I imagine when my wife will leave home 5 o'clock to sing in the church, I will be returning 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the evening from the singing. Who takes care of the home? Who cooks the food? Who dresses the house? Who does those domestic responsibilities? So her inadequate of meeting up her domestic duties brought about the domestic violence. So the woman is charged with a domestic responsibility at home, not in the church. And it is given unto man one day, one hour or 2 hours to worship God in a week, and now go and rest. Even on that day and after rest, the woman will sing and will remain in the church from morning to evening. Have you rested? Did you rest? You did not rest. So the gospel preachers, the so-called pastors and GOs, are the problems our homes are having. They are the ones corrupting the mind of the woman, diverting their attention against that which is necessary, which is also their duty at home. When a woman fails to perform her domestic responsibility, then the home suffers. I don't know if any man there who is homely can tell me that what I'm saying doesn't make sense. Imagine when your wife will wake up in the morning without preparing meal and left the house. A woman you married, let us be honest. Let us face fact. And this woman you use your money to marry is going to serve a man in the name of daddy GO or daddy pastor or daddy and mommy, one stupid man somewhere. How will you feel? Your head will be running with a lot of things. Let us put chastity aside. The law of chastity is not the area I'm going to. By the time you wake up as a man and you look around the service, there are some domestic responsibilities that are not the duty of a maid in the house. No matter how median you are, there are some domestic responsibilities that are not meant for the maid. Let me tell you something. The food that the king eats, a true king, a maid does not prepare his food. The wife must prepare the food of that if a true king. It's not what maid prepares. So in such a house where so many of us in our spiritual growth, in our able men, agility as men in the hustling field or in the labor market, we all belong or associate our eternal soul to one believer or the other. And we keep some laws. And now, by the time you wake up to receive the service of that your woman or that your wife or that your lover you kept in the house, the services is not there. And then there is no understanding towards why that services is not being performed domestically. Then expect a domestic violence. Let me tell you something. The culture and tradition of the ancient covenant of the Father is the symbol of omnipotency and of purification and of beauty, truth, and holiness. That is the symbol of the ram and the horn. For the call of the angel of the sanctuary in the traditional circle of worship. Now, on that note, as a foundation, I want to make a reading from my book. This is my book. I am an author of 24 different books, and this is the first of my book, which has to do with fidelity of marriage, amusement, and fashion. In a home, marriage makes the home, and in that home, something amuses them, and in that home, they have a style of fashion. Every home has their fashion. Every home has their amusement. And those fashions and amusements are part of our domestic responsibilities. Okay, now let us look into what a home stands for. I want to take a reading from page 177 of my book in a subject called The Basis of a True Home. It says, a home is not a home in the eye of the gospel unless there dwells perfect confidence and love between the husband and the wife. The only thing that can bridge that perfect understanding, that perfect confidence and love between the man and the woman in a home is the neglect of those domestic responsibilities. That is the only thing that can bridge the love. That is the only thing that can bridge the understanding. That is the only thing that can bridge the confidence. Why? That domestic responsibility of the woman is not being carried out appropriately. There is no home such have ever allowed peace to reign in. That is why I choose, after the deep thought, and the Lord said, I should teach this and warn you out there, the pastor, with your excessive programs. The Lord is not seeing all that. God is not seeing you there. I have been there. I have been moved. I have been used by these so-called GOs and so-called evil pastors all over, destroying home in the name of gospel, in the name of prayer houses. Homes are in shambles, and we have all been drunk out of that bitter experience. Now it is time to correct it. It is time to begin to checkmate the programs of these pastors. A woman will wake up in the morning to go to shop. She will report to the pastor first before she goes to her business. And when she closes her business, she returns to pastor to offload the one that she gathered in the business before she can get home. And when they get home, the home suffers lack of her responsibility. There is troubles in church homes. There is no home that has peace today, but there is churches even right on our doors. There are churches everywhere. So domestic responsibility brought about domestic violence. Domestic responsibility brought about domestic violence. Love, union, rest, confidence, and absolute trust, where the breath of suspicious of infidelity cannot enter. Where the breath of suspicious infidelity cannot enter, because the woman is responsible of her domestic goals. Okay, where the woman and the man each have implicit confidence in each other, honor and virtue reigns. There is nothing that can breach the love of a man and a woman who have accepted to live together and raise a family, other than when each other begin to neglect their responsibilities domestically. Not even that there is no food in the house. When we perform our domestic responsibilities aright, we cannot lack food in the house. Domestic responsibility brought about domestic violence, and the cause for it is these useless and so-called fake men of God all over, opening churches to enrich their pockets. Confusing homes, sacking men from their jobs in the name of tithes, stealing with the name of God. This is what has kept us in this direction that we are. I want to take another one important responsibility to share with you. He said, if a man in the home does his job, and the woman in the home does her responsibilities, the duties and responsibilities of the man and the woman is 95% domestic related. I don't know if I am wrong or right, but this is a fact. The duties and responsibilities of the man and the woman that maintain love in the home is 95% domestic approach. So imagine when that domestic rapport is lost in a home, that home will be a shambles. That is the situation between Osinachi and husband. But they cannot explain this because you don't know how to explain it. I now put myself into my shoe. You can see the mansion I live in. And I have a lady, a young lady in my house who happens to be a sister to my own wife. My wife has a little baby. She takes care of the children every morning before they go to school. At 5 o'clock, this young lady will wake up. She will not clean the house. She will run to Winners Chapel. Winners Chapel is one of the useless churches we have in Grand. It's a Satanic church. It's not of God. I'm not here to Christian, but I'm teaching you fact. You will leave the house without sweeping the house from Monday to Monday. Church programs. Every early morning in the church, every evening in the church. One day, I became angry and I said, what kind of a man will keep you in the house? It's a kind of scenario. The visitor's toilet cannot be clean. The house cannot be clean. When my wife is done with the children to go to school, I will drive the children to school, or my wife will drive them to school, and she is not in the house. She only returned to come and eat food, no cooking. I mean, even the sister became irritated. You see, domestic violence, that brought a confusion in the house. And everybody began to complain. What kind of church is this? What kind of prayer are you making? Well, I mean, it becomes an issue. And when they return home, they will put the program of their pastor in their ear, and that is all. And then I now cry for the young generations. The churches have destroyed our women. We cannot find good women to marry because of church. You might think I don't know what I'm saying, but this is the truth. Our women became more corrupt because of these GOs, these people you call pastors. They are devilish. They don't have the atom of gospel principle or standard in them at all. They destroy homes in the name of teaching or preaching the gospel. Domestic violence. Domestic violence. So now I took up another example of domestic violence. There is a prayer house within my church, within my apartment here, organized by women. And from 5 o'clock they will begin their noise with their band that they are praying to God. They will continue this exercise until 5 p.m. From morning until 5 p.m. So I and my wife was making a study. Between that morning of Saturday morning, my wife took care of all the washings in the house. We have no maid because of this domestic responsibility misunderstandings. Then we decided to keep no maid. My wife assists me. I assist my wife the way I could. Now, she took care of all the washings. These women were still in the church. She took care of over 200 to 300 beds that she is training. She took care of them. She cooked. She prepared the home, clean everywhere. And in this exercise she was doing after the evening to take her bath. 6 o'clock is already there in the evening. Then she enters the kitchen to prepare the evening food. And they were still dancing and beating their drums in the church. And my wife now asked me, these women in this church, since morning till now, that means how does their home look like? It's not that the church has made them richer than everybody in the environment. It's not that the church has made them to see God every morning. It's not that the church has made them to improve one day in character or in status or in anything. Even they diminish every second, but yet they are in church every second. So my wife was like, hell. He said, this is why the children and the women of today cannot find a husband to marry. Because when the men look at them finish what they are doing in the church, and they don't have that spirit to pick one. This is what has kept our women at home, that they don't marry quick. This domestic failure of responsibility. And that many who have married, and if any man that you find left hand on the wife, that wife has failed her domestic responsibility. This is the truth. This is the whole truth and nothing but the truth. There is nothing that angers a man. Myself as inclusive, I am a man. There is